Hello all, this is Vanessa Love, and this is my channel about the mental health field and related topics. So, if you are not aware, my first master's degree is in art therapy. And ever since I graduated about 9 years ago, things have been hectic. Just hectic. Oh, wait, no, it's 10 years ago. Sorry. Forgot. It's been a long time. So when I was going through grad school, they talked about license. And what they didn't entirely explicitly say most occasions was that there is a license for professional counseling. There was not a license for art therapy in Connecticut until 2019. 8 years after I graduated, finally there was this license. I had a lot of concerns about it before it came through, and I still think that the art therapy field is being massively screwed, and that we are not in a place of any real standing, and it's so frustrating. So let's get into it. So to become a licensed professional counselor in Connecticut, at the time that I became one, I think that there's a difference. There's a couple of differences that have changed over the years. You had to graduate from a master's program in counseling or a related field. They had some requirements with that. You had to send in your transcripts. You had to fill out the application. You had to have probably letters from your references, recommendations. And let's see, you had to have a supervisor who signed off on your hours, 3,000 hours. You had to have, I think, at least 100 hours of supervision that you most likely paid for yourself, unless you were working in a facility, working towards your hours, working towards your licensure. And you had to take a test. At that point, and I'm going way back here, at that point, 9 years ago, when I took that test, you had to go in person. Sorry, it's just so funny. You had to go in person when it was offered. Take it with pencil and paper. I'm serious. Pencil and paper. And you waited for a long time to get your results. So fun. And that test was probably about $300 or $200. The application fee was probably about $250 at that point, and just so much with it. So there's that. With continuing to have your license, you have to do your continuing education credits, and they have added things like you have to know about, I think, multicultural art therapy, or do ethics every 2 years, and then, or not art therapy, multicultural issues and ethics in counseling. And then I think you have to do something with military. You have to know about military things, PTSD, something that relates to military or military families. So, got those requirements. CEUs can be anywhere between, I think, $60 per year to $500 if you want to get a bunch done in a weekend. Like with conferences, they'll usually, you sign up, you go through, fill out your course assessments, like, hey, everything was great. This person did great. I was really interested. And then you get your certificates that say that you passed that. So you have all of that, and hopefully at that point you get your license. For the registered art therapist, right? So your ATR. If you wanted to get that from the American Art Therapy Association to get recognition in the field, this is not covered by insurances. It's just something kind of extra to add. It just, I want to say it shows excellence in the field, but I'm like, it's a lot of different things. It just means that you pass the requirements that they put on you arbitrarily, almost as if it's a license, but it's not a license. So it's 3,000 hours, 50% of those at the time that I applied. 50% of those have to be with an art therapist, so you can see a regular therapist for your supervision, but 50% of your total supervision, and 50% to 100%, have to be with an art therapist. So you are paying again out of pocket for this. If there is no one in your immediate area, you might have to travel to go and receive your supervision. Woohoo. And you have to pay for the application. All right. If you want to be a ATRVC, so a board certified registered art therapist, you have to take I think it's a $200 or $300 test. The test questions are difficult. You have to learn the material. A lot of the things are things that I feel like don't really relate to many art therapists. I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but things that I've heard along the way are things like, what temperature is a high fire clay, what temperature do you cook, or do you put it on the kiln? And I'm like, I don't have a kiln here. I don't, this is stuff I learned in undergrad when I took pottery classes to get into art therapy school. Hi. And then there was another test question that kind of someone had kind of passed along that was about the Mandala assessment research instrument. You have to get certified in that. You don't just randomly know about that. And by the way, the original book by Joan Kellogg that talked about all of her research that she did for the MARI, the Mandala assessment research instrument, is out of print. How are you supposed to know any of this without either getting the certification or just randomly having the book? It's not great. So you definitely just have to get a study guide from wherever you can find one. Very difficult, by the way. I think there's maybe 2 places that have an official study guide for this, and that's it. That's it. And you have to pay $200 for this test. Okay. So for the licensure that finally went through in 2019, and by the way, not covered by insurances. I think it's 3,000 hours, very similar to the ATR. You have to take the test for to get the license. So you have to take the board certification test. Luckily, right now, Pearson's does allow for people to go take the test at a location at a time that not everyone around you is taking the same test. So it's a little bit easier. I did have to take, other than the NCE, which is the National Counselor's Exam, I had to take the NCMHCE, the National Counselor's Mental Health Counselor's Exam. And that one, you just have to learn how to take that test. Every clinical thing that you thought that you knew and might make in actual therapy, it's out the window. It's not going to be on that test. And some of the things that they test about just are so obscure that you wouldn't necessarily see that, so your brain wouldn't necessarily recognize it. Things like, I was going through some of the practice tests, because luckily online there's plenty of them, yay, and went on, paid whatever I needed to pay for my study guide, and to take it kind of online the way that you would take it in person. And so they had questions on there about brief psychosis, which I've never seen before, and adult oppositional defiant disorder, which is again one of those things I've never seen before. I have seen kids with oppositional defiant disorder. That's usually when they're diagnosed, but I've never seen it in adults. It's a very odd. It's again, obscure, things that you just don't see. And they actually expect that most people don't pass the first time that they take the mental health counselor exam. So you most likely will have to pay another $200 to take the test again. Yay. Also remember that each one of these is different. Every license is different by state. So New York, different requirements for the creative arts therapy license, which is not just art therapist, it's also music therapist, drama therapist, I think poetry therapist, like all of the ones that are expressive arts. And I don't know if Massachusetts has one. I know that that you can look on the American Art Therapy Association website and see which places have recognition or licensure. Most places have the national recognition, but not the state recognition. And some of the places that have it by state, like New York, sometimes they're just not covered by insurances, and that makes me very wary of the fields. I do believe that if you're going to spend all of this money, that you should get some sort of ROI, return on investment, that would actually be monetary and not just emotionally you feel good about it, or legally you feel good about it, or you like having the letters behind your name. Hopefully it's a little bit more than just your esteem that you're getting back from spending all of this money on all of these things. So yes, the state requirement, I believe it's 3,000 hours. I haven't looked too hard into it. The $300 application fee, the $200 board certification test, probably supervision, your transcripts, letters of recommendation, all of the things that are required for any license, but also not covered by insurances. So you will be having to convince people to pay out of pocket or find out from their insurance plan if this is covered. And by the way, not allowed to call yourself an art therapist if you are in Connecticut and only have your recognition, your national recognition. You can be nationally recognized as an art therapist, but state-wise, if you call yourself an art therapist and do not have a license, you are committing fraud because you are not licensed by the state to call yourself an art therapist. Fun. So much fun. Oh, so much fun. So yes, there is a lot. And also remember that you have to take your continuing education credits, and each one has a different requirement. So I believe the ATR, you have to have them in art therapy. So those aren't cheap. Just dishing out more every year. And then, at least when you go to renew your licenses and recognitions, it's not as much as the initial fee for that. But man, I kind of feel like they're like, hey, did you make any money? You should just give it to us or give it to someone else. You shouldn't have it. Y'all realize that most people have student loans, right? And then there comes the certifications, and yeah, I'll just have to do a whole other video on that because there's just so much. There's so much, and I hope that you know that there is so much. And people get into this field, and it is so fun, and it's so wonderful when you actually get to sit down with your clients and actually do art therapy. But then there's all of this other stuff. Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. I will talk with you guys soon.